All right, guys, let's talk cheapies, mid-range, cash cows, possible keepers, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to start up top here with Maddie Lodge. I don't have any of these good cheapies, let's say, in my team at the moment, so we're going to be from that side. And Lodgy, we've spoken about a little bit. Obviously, I started with him, and he had a delightful first game where he got injured in his 18 minutes for 15 points. Turns out he probably would have been a fairly decent cash cow, to start the year with, and make us a bit of cash and do all right. But of course, that wasn't to be the case. But sitting with a 38 average, his last 3 weeks have been pretty solid. He's got a 31, a 54, and a 45. So minutes are pretty standard around that 46. He had 50 last week, which is a little bit above what he's normally done, but completely fine on that front. With the odd player out for their team, obviously you got Ricky, you got Glenn, you got Carrigan out now. These minutes won't change for Lodge, but his role as an enforcer in this attack is probably going to be a really important one. But sitting there, the price for me kind of gets me. I think it's way too expensive. He's going to play 13. He'll score pretty well for you, but I don't see him making a lot of money. He's not a keeper, so I'd probably stay clear of him at this point, unfortunately. A few people have been asking me about Morgan Harper, and let's have a little bit of a chat about him. At 478k, obviously him and Saab have just become absolute superstar keepers now, but that's another story. What do we got here? We got the basically since he's moved into the centers, he played in round 5 and got a 27 first game. They were pretty bad. Round 6 they were pretty bad as well. Round 7 we then have Tommy Turbo coming back, right? He's played 4 games now, is that right? 4 or 5 games. But a 36, a 47, a 53, and a 47 with only 1 try is pretty cool. So you're looking at meters over 100 in every game. His tackling's pretty solid, and his tackle busts are pretty consistent. So if you're looking for someone at a slight discount, I think he's in a pretty good position to score fairly well. You look in the previous year, in 2020 when he played, he did also have a bunch of decent games, but a few of them involved some tries. So if you think that the Manly boys are going to continue to score really well and do really well, then you're picking up someone at 478k at a bit of a discount to some of the keeper centers that you've got. He's in the top 1,000. He's only selected by 0.3% of team. So that's a very interesting thing to look at. If you'd like him as a player, if you like the Manly boys and you like watching him play, then he could be an interesting option for your side. But he's someone that for head-to-head plays, he might be a really cool one. For overall, he doesn't play 13, so it's like, well, do you bring him in now, or do you maybe wait a few weeks in 14, see how he goes over the next few, and go from there? So that's something to think about with Morgan. We'll slide down the list and talk about Maddie Burton again. So he comes in at 475 now. Did have a pretty bad week last week, and it was interesting to see that they hardly went left. So they play against who they got this week. So the Bunnies, and you'd imagine they'd be pretty even across the park. Bunnies don't really have a stronger or weaker side in defence, which is usually the case in these top sort of 4 sides there. But for Burton averaging 41.5, a lot of people talked about a lot of his good scores are when he scores tries, and that's completely fair enough. He has 2 games there where he hasn't scored a try, where he's got a 25 and a 15. So that's something to worry about. The big thing for him is that when he plays in a 6 or 7 role, he gets big points. You see there 73, 69, and 86 in his last 3 games in that role. So you'd be picking him up really for that reason, and you get the half and the centre dual for someone that's not very well owned in the top 1,000. So a question mark on his ability to keep scoring in the centres, but someone who will score well for you in 13, for example. And if any Cleary or Luai gets injured or suspended or gets rested, then he's going to score well in that game, in those games as well when he plays in the 6 or 7 role. Another interesting one and a good one to talk about this week, I think, is Nico Hines. And if you bring in Nico, you get someone who is a dual position as well in half and wing fullback. He averages incredible when he plays 80 minutes, right? You're getting scores of 50, 47, 36, 63, 70, right? That's just this year. And you look back and he's got a 36 in 68 minutes, 39, 63, and 24 in his first official game in the last game, one of the last games around in 2019. So what you're going to get when he plays. He's going to break even of -9. When he gets 80 minutes, he's going to be great, as I said. But he's going to be playing this week. He'll get the 80 minutes at fullback. It looks like maybe in round 12. But if he doesn't, then he'll be back on the interchange, and his money making potential might slow down. But in 13, he's going to play at fullback or in the halves wherever they need him. And then any games where Munster gets dropped, Hughes gets dropped, not dropped, rested. There's a suspension injury to Pap, anything like that, he's going to play. So he's someone that you could probably take a gamble with. At 458, he's probably a little bit high. Like last week would have been a really cool one to do, but obviously hindsight is 2020. Nico's a fairly decent option if you need someone, especially this week, to cover without trying to drop one of your big guns. He'll do pretty well in the next bunch of rounds. In terms of his scoring, because that's, I guess, the aim of the game is, yes, a bit of money generation, but your scoring is the most important one there, and Nico is going to provide that for you. Victor the Inflictor. We'll talk about him just briefly. 456k, I can't believe he's got that low. He's someone that I think is around a high 500s kind of player, mid 500s, 550, 580 kind of deal with him. But you look at his scores, and yes, he had bigger minutes on the weekend, 52. Got a try assist, couple of line breaks, which is really rare for him. So just think about that. Is he going to get that every week? To get 52 with 2 line breaks and a try assist for a middle forward is not very good. He's not someone that makes a lot of meters. He's very impactful with his tackling. He does make a bunch of missed tackles. You see a few games at the start of last year, he did really, really well, but they were in big tackling and big run meter games. So it'd be interesting to see if he can get back to that. And if he can, then I think he's going to make some good cash and make some decent points for you. My question is, I don't think he is a keeper, so you'd have to trade him back out, which is a bit of an issue. So that's Victor there. Again, guys, I won't make too many recommendations in this one. I'm just going to give you all the facts, and you can decide if that suits your team best. I've just popped out the trades video, and if you're sitting with lower trades, and some of these guys probably aren't a good idea. If you're sitting with higher trades, you can sort of play around with bringing in a Nico Hines or these types of guys there. Finucane's an interesting one. Will he make Origin? Probably not. He's getting really cheap now, Dale, at 444. So he's someone that coming into round 13, it's like, well, do you pick him up now that he's playing some bigger minutes? You look at what he's drawn up in these last couple of games. 66 minutes for 39 is not great. 40 off the interchange. So if you're picking him up, you're expecting a score of, let's say, 40 or above, 40 to 45 average at 446k. Will make you 100k. Right, but is that worth it again? Bring in someone like Finucane who could do fairly well. I'd say fairly well, averaging like 40, 45, but then you'll have to trade him out because he's not a keeper. So think about that when you're looking at Dale going forward. Lockie Lamb, I think it's worth talking about him in a couple of weeks because he's not really going to gain too much in price over this next little period. Tommy Gilbert, we've spoken about briefly, but similar to Lockie Lamb, I think you can wait until round 14 with these type of guys. If he ends up getting a big minute role, we've seen what he can do. He's got in those last bunch of games there, he's got 44, 57, 30, 45, and 50, and that's not even in 80 minutes, and that's in second row role. If he's playing sort of big 50 to 60 minutes through the middle, I think his skills running the ball and also tackling hard is going to get him up to closer to a 45, 50 average. And a dual position, 435k with no one owning him is a pretty interesting option there. If you're in head-to-head, then you can look at guys like Lamb and Gilbert coming into this week. But other than that, we'll wait a little bit on those types of guys going forward. CHN we'll mention as well. So Corey, if it clicks. All right, now we're on. Corey Harper at Naira at 432k. Hasn't gone up too much yet. I think he's just gone up about 75k. But in the top 1,000, he's owned by 25% of people, which is pretty crazy, I think. Yes, the top 1,000 people we're looking at, guys that are playing overall, you'd imagine so. And bringing in this kind of guy, obviously doesn't play 13, is an interesting one, but some decent scores there. You look at 49, 30, 46, and 57. If we are, for a 45.5 average, and that's at least 150k undervalued there, which is great. And if you're happy to pick him up for the next 2 games and looking at scores in the mid 40s, then that's perfect, and you're going to get some money making. You're just going to miss out on him for 13, and the only worry about him is that he loses his spot because of what Ricky does with the team at the moment. So something to think about with him. Brian Kelly, you won't go too much into. I've spoken about him a fair bit at the moment. Just isn't scoring well enough. It's averaging 34.6 isn't enough to be a keeper, and I think if you bring in a center right now, you want him to be a keeper averaging 40 plus. So that's that there. Aikens has made too much cash. He's done pretty well actually. Much better than I thought he was going to do compared to last year. Reecey Walsh, for me, we've already spoken about him a fair bit, but at this stage, again, it's bringing him in for a couple of weeks of decent scores. He should be playing around 50 minutes off the bench, you'd imagine. his 48 average, I think, is pretty well spot on to what he's going to continue scoring. So if that's the case, he's about 200k or so undervalued, and he's only going to miss 13, right? Unless they decide to rest him for a game or two. But I imagine with how good he's playing and Warriors aren't really winning, it's probably a smart idea to continue playing him, even if it is off the bench for 55 minutes or 50 minutes. I think that will be, it's enough game time for him to make an impact, but also not too long a game time for him to get absolutely gassed every week, and plenty of bumps and bruises for a guy that's 18 years old. So if you're looking at him, or if you already have him, keep holding strong, and you can possibly bring him in if you have a lot of trades and are able to field a really solid 12 to 14 players in round 13. So keep that in mind when you're looking at those types of players. How good Saab scores been? He's still averaging 27. It's funny as. Who else we got? Flegs. We spoke about Flegs. Obviously a decent score, 30 odd on the weekend, but their forwards all got hammered, obviously, with their team getting smashed. So I'd expect a score of 40 odd or so from him, and a 381k. He's an interesting one to pick up this week, who should be able to, as I said, score decently. Plays in 13. For me, he could be an interesting option for a Simkin, which is something to think about. But again, he's going to be a cash cow, not a higher level cash cow at 381, who won't be a keeper. So you're going to have to trade him back out at some point when he gets to hopefully 500k or something like that. All right, scrolling down. Tex Hoy's in there. I don't want to talk about him. Marshke, I think he's a bit too expensive now. Who else we got? Yeah, we'll see. We're starting to get. Yeah, I don't think I've recommended any of the guys so far as a really clear buy, which is a bit annoying. Tyrone May, a few people have spoken about picking him up as a guy that can play a bit of a role. He should play some. He probably plays in the halves with Burton in round 13. If there's any restings or anything like that, he'll come into that. So that's an interesting one. Crossland should only have the spot for the next week, I imagine, with Green on the interchange, on the reserves there. Who else we got? Tyson Gamble. If you have him, you're holding. You're not picking him up though. Umbai, we spoke about him in the team list video. Got a 27 on the weekend. You'd imagine he scores a little bit better than that, but it's is he going to actually make cash for you? It's good that he has a dual position center and wing fullback, but so will he make cash? And you'll probably have to trade him out. Later in the year, maybe it's in round 17, you have to trade him out. So will he be able to make enough cash in that time? That's going to be the real question with Moses Mbai. Hoping this is helping, guys. If you're enjoying this, please hit like and subscribe. We'll go from there. Jarvis Bowen averaging 39 in his 2 games. He got a 30 and a 46. So did get a try last week. They don't play in round 13, so think about that. If you're playing head to head and you want someone that's going to do okay in the centers for the Cowboys, then Bowen might be a man. They're playing fairly well, which is good. Farmasili comes into the 13 role, but I'm too scared about him. He just comes in and out of the team all the time, so he might play the 13 role, have 25 minutes at the start and not come back on again. So, and hopefully Alvaro gets all those minutes. Cody Ramsey will score better at fullback, but how much better? You don't want him to be there for a few weeks and then they get jack of it and put Bird there, or obviously when it doesn't look like Dufty's injury is too bad, so he could be back in the next bunch of weeks, and I don't think that's enough time for Ramsey to do well. Tommy Talau, 279 is the one I've been talking about. I think you just keep waiting on him until 13 and make your decision from there as to if you think he might start playing better and is a cash cow going forward. Max Fagai at an average of 22. Yes, he scored 1 on the weekend. Yes, he didn't start, but he's also got 37 minutes to get 1. So we don't want to have a Zach Sini kind of issue with Fagai. So I'd be steering clear if you can. And then we got a couple other guys. We got what's his name? Custer's going to play the 6 role, but how long that lasts is another story. They don't play 13. And then what else we got? Albert Kelly. Where's Kelly? Lussick's coming onto the bench, so he'll be an interesting one as a decent scorer. If Reed Marnie plays Origin, for example, which is something to actually think about. And Albert Kelly, he's had some. Let's see if his stats are actually in the system. He's obviously played here in the past. He scored fairly well and went over and played in the UK. Yeah, they haven't got any stats on him. But for him, I think, with the amount of changes that the Broncos make on a regular basis, I think you can hold off on bringing in Kelly for this week. I think it's probably not the smartest move. He will probably score okay, but do you want to take that risk on someone at that price? Obviously, he's really cheap, but it's he could end up being just a red dot and stuffing you up through the bye period. And then Sean Bloor, we need to wait. For me, you need to wait for him to get more minutes to score well. And at 238k, break even at 24. I'm not even sure if he hits that number this week. So keep an eye on that one. And that's probably all on the cash cows front, guys. I hope this video really helped you. For guys around that 480k and downwards. Again, just based on your trades as to if you want to pick these guys up. If you have a bunch spare trades, then sweet. If you need one of these guys as a placeholder while you have a Tyron Peachy out or something like that, then it's a tough one because you don't want to have them sitting as one of these guys over the next bunch of weeks, especially when we have injuries and suspensions all the time. So keep an eye on that one. Hope you enjoyed this one, guys. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.